Ubisoft is in terrible trouble. And I've said this dozens and dozens of times over on That Game Place, but it's best to start this year from new ground, new footing, talking about Ubisoft's failures for the last 4 years. That's right, 4 years. Let's take a look at it from a fresh perspective with some great analysis from That Park Place and Marvin Montanaro. Now, before we get started, let me just remind you I'm on a bit of a subscriber drive. That's right. If you look down there and you're not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and click subscribe. It's free. It's a free offer. And you can turn on the bell notification so you don't miss anything. There's a decent chance I produce 2 to 3 things per day, and you wouldn't want to miss those, would you? Because unlike the mainstream media out there, I'm going to give you the story fairly straight and direct, with just a little bit of my opinion. And as we're in pursuit of 100K by 2025's end, I need your help, and I thank you for it. So be sure to share the stories around, and let's get more people involved in one of the best culture channels out there. Now let's get to it. And of course, the headline says it all. Ubisoft's value tanks. Market cap dropped 85% from 2021 to 2025. And that's big damage, considering that the lead into that was what happened in 2020, where the market value of this company shot up like a rocket. Well, many gaming studios did. Let's take a look at the article. Once a titan in the gaming industry, Ubisoft has experienced a dramatic and concerning decline in value over the past 4 years. From a market capitalization of $12.17 billion in January of 2021, just a few short years ago, the company's value plummeted to a mere $1.78 billion by January of 2025. And welcome, we're here. Happy New Year. This represents an alarming loss of approximately 85% of its market value, something that all gaming heavyweights should be concerned with, because they're all facing similar fates if they don't get it together. Although many of them have already been suffering similar fates because they haven't got it together. Of course, these numbers underscore the severe financial turmoil and strategic missteps that have left the Assassin's Creed developer struggling to maintain its foothold in a highly competitive industry. And this industry is significant. It's something that's dominated my life since the 80s. And many of you probably would agree. In January of 2021, Ubisoft stood strong with a market cap of $12.17 billion. It's a lot of money. This reflected its status as a powerhouse in the gaming world. However, in January of 2024, the company's value had been cut by over 74%, dropping to just $3.14 billion. Whatever could have happened? Well, let's take a look. A dwindling fan base interested in their titles, and many other AAA game studios titles as well. The downward trajectory continued unabated into 2025, where the market cap further decreased by nearly 43% from the previous year, down to and settling at $1.78 billion. This total reduction of $10.39 billion over 4 years highlights deep-rooted issues within the company's operations and strategy, which is a nice way of saying, lean too far into the message for anyone to tolerate anymore. You filled up your companies with activists and not with actual game makers. In fact, you pushed out the talent that you had in favor of the non-talent that would lead you to this particular doom. When we factor in their most recent reported loans from March of 2024, totaling $2.71 billion, likely higher now due to the updated rates and additional borrowing not yet reflected in the valuation, Ubisoft's financial position seems to have worsened compared to 2024. That kind of money equals a desperate company, perhaps on its way out. The company's inability to sustain liquidity sufficient to cover its mounting debt is exacerbated by impending release of Assassin's Creed Shadows in February, on Valentine's Day, actually. A game that has already garnered significant negative reception, and of course, it's not even out yet. The portrayal of a samurai, and a particular samurai, goes against what the expectations of the fan base were, and what would be acceptable in Japan specifically, a place where they already had a studio ready to go and facilitate the cultural sensitivity required for such a game. Osaka which I believe is now closed, or at least I reported that not that many days ago, if not having sustained significant layoffs at that location. If Shadows flops, which we've been talking about quite a bit over on That Game Placed, it could cripple Ubisoft's ability to secure further loans to sustain operations through 2025. Well, let me tell you this. If this game tanks, it's over for Ubisoft, likely to succumb to being engulfed by the likes of Tencent and perhaps many other players who are just looking to acquire the underutilized and underappreciated IPs that Ubisoft just seems to either develop very poorly or shy away from because they're too masculine these days. Now, with its current value to debt ratio, no bank will likely extend additional credit without some solid assurance of repayment. Unless a miracle occurs, as Marvin says here, Shadows could deepen Ubisoft's financial woes and potentially push the company toward bankruptcy. Well, let's put it in their words. The lack of net bookings for their upcoming title, Assassin's Creed Shadows, could force them to restructure under the relief of bankruptcy. Van Drunen, founder of Superdata, has voiced a grim prognosis for Ubisoft, suggesting the company is on the verge of privatization and dismantling in 2025, which I think is all but assured at this point. He points out that Ubisoft's share price is nosedived, making it an attractive target for takeover or outright purchase. Could you imagine Elon Musk acquiring Ubisoft? Boy, would the game change. Oh, and games would change, for sure. Its valuable assets, particularly Rainbow Six Siege and Assassin's Creed franchise, could be worth more separately than together. The upcoming Assassin's Creed Shadows faces stiff competition from PlayStation's Ghost of Yotei, and recent failures suggest deeper organizational issues beyond individual game performance. And all of this because they buckled under some trumped-up charges that they didn't treat ladies very well. If you are interested in that conversation, check out that story from That Game Place. Oh, and as an aside, Ghost of Yotei is going to be big trouble too. Ubisoft's missteps, or strategic missteps here, have significantly contributed to its financial decline. Recent game releases, such as Star Wars Outlaws, oh boy, that was a bad decision to give them that license, have fallen short of market expectations. Well, and gamers' expectations also. With pre-orders reportedly abysmal, they were abysmal, and sales figures remaining undisclosed, they're hiding them for a reason. It's a big red flag, according to the article, for financial instability. Big red flag. I think that the lack of performance with a Star Wars game is a catastrophe. And the reason being, well, messaging. The decision to release Outlaws on Steam shortly after launch, deviating from the exclusive Ubisoft Connect platform strategy used for, well, successful titles like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which I still think was a title that fell very far short, suggests a desperate attempt to salvage sales and improve liquidity, which actually that is exactly what it is. They're in big, big financial trouble and they need as much money as they can get, which they didn't really get a lot of buy-in from the fan base for Star Wars Outlaws from Steam either. This move indicates the company lacks confidence in its own distribution channels, along with inability to maintain strategic consistency. Honestly, they just should have avoided their exclusive platform, Ubisoft Connect, and the idea of a subscription service that was going to quickly fall apart once all the games went very, very woke, a word that is falling out of popular use these days because of its incredible unpopularity. Financially, Ubisoft is grappling with mounting debt and declining revenue, and those declines are, well, more than significant, obviously. As of the latest financial report, Ubisoft's non-IFRS net debt stands at 1.1 billion euro, and its IFRS net debt has risen to 1.4 billion euro, up sharply from 880.8 million euro the previous year. Cash reserves are dwindling to about 932 million euro, so under a billion, and the company is struggling to generate significant revenue to offset its borrowing costs, which we talked about previously. And here's the final stroke that we need to acknowledge. The management and organizational issues here at Ubisoft exacerbate their predicament. They have very poor leadership from the family, and the fact that the family is how we got here means they're not a good way to get out of here. Van Drunen criticizes Ubisoft's outdated development approach, which I agree, they have a lot of problems with that. It fails to engage players and build a strong community because they're too busy alienating them with messaging. That's bringing in gamers, and their buy-in is a necessity in the modern gaming landscape, which is probably why Black Myth Wukong did so very well, amongst many other games, who basically thumbed their nose at any of the entities pushing this messaging. In the case of Black Myth Wukong, they very much thumbed their nose at what they called extortion of Sweet Baby Inc. Mind you, those are not my words, those are theirs. Then we arrive at the predicted failure, at least from those of us at that game place, and shutdown of X-Defiant. It wasn't merely a failed launch like so many games this year that forced studios to shut down entirely, but a symptom of a broader problem: Ubisoft's inability to adapt its distribution and development strategies to contemporary demands. And the fact that they just couldn't generate interest fast enough for X-Defiant to make that a successful free-to-play, which is kind of what you have to do in that particular genre of gaming. Look at Fortnite. It's working well. Oh, and Marvel Rivals, by the way. Well done, China. And then we come to the most epic failure of the year: the development cost of Skull and Bones and the complete lack of interest in said game. That cost the company somewhere between $600 and $850 million. I'm more likely to believe $850 million and maybe more. It took them over a decade to get this thing together. And the inefficiencies in resource allocation, project management, and overall understanding of your fan base led to a complete collapse in interest in this title. It would have been much less expensive to redevelop the Assassin's Creed Black Flag game into this new opportunity rather than try to reinvent the wheel. But again, I'm not the CEO of this company, nor even a game director, so what do I know? Ultimately, as Marvin points out here, it comes down to cultural and ideological overreach. That's a huge factor in Ubisoft's downfall. The company's intense focus on DEI and its associated garbage, which leads to, well, exclusivity rather than inclusivity, has alienated a large portion of its core fan base. Not to mention the fact that obviously influences storytelling, which also has turned off a number of other gamers. The overindulgence in DEI without balancing other strategic priorities has led to disenchantment among what you should consider loyal customers and investors, contributing to the erosion of Ubisoft's market confidence. Well, and let's be honest, dominance, which they used to dominate games. All of that led to a problem with their workforce, because if you bring in people who are unqualified, untalented, with no merit, you're going to have to rely on external contractors due to, well, being overstaffed with inexperienced internal workforce, and basically people who shouldn't even be interns, from what I'm to understand. And obviously the reliance on those external forces inflates production costs and leads to a lot of inefficiencies between the time of production, the time of testing and compliance, and then back to the contractors to make all the remedies to what it is that isn't working for the studio. Instead of acquiring Ubisoft's corporate structure outright, like some companies would like to do, Tencent might find more value in purchasing the IPs through a bankruptcy auction instead of investing more money in the company itself. And if you're unfamiliar, Tencent owns a considerable portion of Ubisoft as it stands now. With no more money coming in that way, bankruptcy may be the only option. And naturally, this scenario, according to Marvin, would mark a tragic end for the company as a whole. It was the pinnacle of the gaming industry. It now is not. Could it rise again? Well, that's a question that I would ask you. We've reached audience participation time. So, let me say, do you believe Ubisoft can come back? Do you think that it'll take outside investment and influence? Do you believe they might be better off selling off a few bits and IPs so that they can sustain in order to recover? Do you believe that they're likely to end up in bankruptcy and basically a husk of a once great company in the gaming industry? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below. And as always, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, and until next time, see ya.